welcome back to the Secret Sunday session. Today I'm joined by Todd Jarratt. Thank you so much for joining us today, Todd. I'm very excited to have you on.
Pleasure. I'm excited too.
Now today, for everyone that is listening, we are going to be talking about identity and how Todd has got involved in this space and him being able to work in this area of becoming the identity mentor, as well as what has led him to be in this work and his own story that has made him come here today to be able to also open up with what he has been through. So with no further ado, Todd, as I said, welcome to the podcast and thank you so much for being on and being willing to share your story, because we all know that sometimes that can be really hard to share as well. But for those people that are not aware of who you are, who is Todd Jarratt and what has led him to be here and share his story today?
Straight into identity. I love it. For me, who I am at essence, I'm just a country kid that loves having fun and seeing people happy and fulfilled. That's me at an essence level, and that's sort of what I've distilled my identity down to. But how I got here, as a country kid, grew up in a small town, went through pretty intense bullying. I was labelled as gifted when I was in year 3, so intelligent. So I got accelerated up into year 5 from year 3, and I thought that was amazing until I realised I don't fit in with anyone. I know a lot of people say I didn't fit in with anyone, but in my situation, I was like the alien at school, the weird kid that skipped up. He didn't fit in with us. He didn't fit in with the old group. So I had a big thing around being alone, being lonely, and not fitting in. So trying to fit in and didn't really work, and the bullying was really intense. And I look back, and that was like a gestalt event. That bullying in primary school, it caused some pain, but then also it developed me into a point where it was like, well, if you're going to pick on me for being different, I'm going to give you a reason to pick on me. I'm going to be really different. I'm going to make this a badge of honor. I'm going to make this my armor. And so at 10, that's what started happening, was the development of the armor. It was like, I'll achieve in every way I can. And so I went through school, stuck through school and high school and university. So really switched on, worked my butt off. I was in sports science, but I had a background in motocross. So I started sports commentary when I was 13. So I was like a pipsqueak kid, pre-pubescent on a microphone commentating the motocross nationals and was doing that. I did that up until about 23, so about 10 years. And then when I went to uni, I studied exercise science. My passion was training athletes because I'd been an athlete at the national level, but had the intellect to want to develop more. And when I actually started at uni, I also started managing a national motorsport team and moved into sports journalism. So I was training athletes, studying full-time at uni, plus the commentary and the journalism. So there was a lot happening. And in essence, I was hospitalized in 2016, so third year of uni. So I would have been 19 to 20, about 20. And at that point in time, they just said I had an acute bout of colitis, which I didn't know what that was. Basically, in our terms now, it's an autoimmune condition where the immune system's attacking the large intestine. So they just put me on some medication and sent me on my way. And a month and a half, 2 months later, I was back to normal. Like I did a couple sessions of headspace meditation, and I was like, I'm good, I'm done. I don't need to worry about that. So back into like the achiever and the driver. Then I moved to the Sunshine Coast originally it was to get a letter of recommendation to lecture to head to Stanford University in the US to go and coach over there in their Olympic sport program. When I came up, the guys I was getting the letter of recommendation from said, hey, you're an incredible coach. Do you want to lecture at the university and teach the personal training courses and train your athletes up here? Wow, that's an opportunity, because I was basically running the academy down in Central Victoria where I was before that. So I said, yep. So I've been on the Sunshine Coast since. I was lecturing at uni and training the athletes and running a mentorship at that point. So I was then 22 and upskilling allied health professionals, and did a stint in the US, getting to learn, go to Stanford, go to a few other facilities and work in that high performance space and train high performance athletes back in Australia too. And my health started going downhill again. Basically overworked, under recovered, stress, emotional suppression and repression. late 2018, I started having symptoms coming up again, and I just kept pushing through. I'll be fine. Went and saw a couple specialists. Didn't want to go down the medication path till early 2019. It was like, okay, you probably need to. Then through 2019, it was basically a roller coaster, seeing specialists kind of in and out of hospital a few times. And then September 2019, I was emergency hospitalized. And that's when they told me, now I look back, it's a bit different, but they told me I had 24 to 48 hours to live. And I was 24 at the time. And like I said, looking back, they would have saved me with surgery. I wouldn't have died in the hospital. But when a surgeon walks in and says that to you, and you're 24, everything falls away. And my mum was on speakerphone because everyone was down in Victoria. And I had that. What was all this for? Like, I'm not connected with my family. I don't have a friendship group. The accolades or the titles or what I'm teaching or achieving at a young age, none of it matters. It's all just filling up my ego. And so it was a really big crumbling away of my sense of, at that point, it was really just a sense of materialistic achievement and societal achievement. And I went on the medication for 6 months, all the heavier and heavier meds that they were putting me on. And then I got to a point in March of 2020 where I actually got a call from the surgeons who said, unfortunately, you're a non-responder. So you're not getting better with the medication. And when you've been told by the white lab coats for the couple of years prior that the only thing that will save you is the medication, and you have that belief, when you're told now the medication can't save you, it's like you're chained to a ship and that ship starts to sink. You can't get off. And so it was a really scary time. Now, from my background in lecturing in human bioscience and physiology, I understood the body. And I'd already read Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and Dr. Bruce Lipton's work and understood conceptually, cognitively, how the body can heal itself. But there was no way in hell I had the confidence to go, I can heal myself that same way. And it was really until the surgeon said, you're a non-responder. And they said, keep taking the medication, even though you're not responding. Didn't make sense to me. So I was in this inner turmoil. And I made a decision on the 28th of March, 2020. I was like, I'm not taking medication again. I'll either die in my bed at home or I will live through this somehow. And that was my faith. I wasn't religious, I was really spiritual at that time, but there was this some sense of, God, if I'm supposed to live through this, I will. And it got worse before it got better. My liver and my kidneys then went into shutdown. My body was turning yellow, and I was a real mess. I couldn't move, couldn't sit up, couldn't feed myself, couldn't brush my teeth. I was vegetable in bed. And a couple of weeks went by, and I was like, I'm done. That was actually when we talk about the contemplation of death. There was a real period there where, that was happening. I wrote letters home to my family multiple nights, not just saying, I love you, but I love you, and this is what I love about you. Please don't ever change this. There was a real period of 2 weeks there where I can remember not knowing if I'd wake up the next day. And, there's been stuff, it's been my core trauma on the other side of that it's been to process and work through. But there was one particular night that I was going to bed, and I didn't have a religious connection, but there was just this deep feeling within me of like, there's something beyond us. And that had really come from 6 months prior when I was told I might not live, that something opened. And I was just prayed, if you want to use that term, prayed like, God, if I'm supposed to make it through this, like I've let go of the medication, I'm not doing well, I'm supposed to make it through this, I need a sign. And the next day, Mitchell Vickridge messaged me. Forward story, he's a guy that saved my life. He's the holistic practitioner that taught me deep breath work, that taught me nutraceuticals, that taught me about energetics in the body, emotional suppression, the inner child work, the somatics, how to adjust the body and get the organs back online. And we started there. And it was a 2.5, 3-year journey from that point in 2020 for me to actually get back to full health. But against what the medical professionals said was possible, against the system's beliefs, against all of the fear that was being projected toward me, there was just something inside me that was like, you can get through this. And during that journey, I was down to like 50 kilos in terms of body weight, and I'm now 80, so I was nearly half my body weight. I was stick and bone and a whole lot of other things there that I usually gloss over, where recently I thought about there's some real intensity to that. But yeah, in essence, I was a walking skeleton when I could walk a few months later, with the care of my family for 6 to 8 months of 2020 during the really intense lockdowns. And it was during that time where I'm no longer a university lecturer. I'm no longer the business owner. I'm no longer the strength coach. I don't have my friends. I don't have the property I was in on the Sunshine Coast. I don't even have that sense of I'm the young, because I got a lot of validation from, oh, you're so successful for your age. All of that was gone. And I'm like, I'm a vegetable down in Victoria. And that was it. And so there was this sense of identity just stripped away. And it was at that point in time I was working with Mitch. And I've, by this point, being the young achiever at now 25, I'd done plenty of coaches, courses, programs, seminars. I'd invested over $150,000 in my growth before this point, working in actions, behaviors, beliefs, and values, which is where most of the personal development work is done. If we want to change our health, we go for a run, or we make it a behavior and go for a run multiple times a week. Or we shift that limiting belief into an empowering belief, which can work, or we shift our values to prioritize health. But I was laying, basically at that point in time, was still kind of like laying around, contemplating living, dying. Like my whole life has been turned upside down. And I haven't consciously changed my values. I haven't changed my beliefs. My behaviors and my actions have all shifted, but I haven't done it. And it was a recognition of in that time, this, if that's the case, there has to be something underneath. If the trees, leaves, and branches and all that start changing, and it used to be an apple tree, now it's a banana tree or an orange tree, something at the roots has had to change. And then there was this recognition, wow, there is a layer deeper. There has to be something deeper for everything else to change. And that's when I recognized and realized it was identity. And I can credit myself for realizing that, but a part of it came from Mitch because we were talking about being identified with ulcerative colitis. And he said, as long as you identify with healing, you're going to always be healing. As long as you identify with this, you're always going to be looking for the flare or the remission stage or the symptoms. And there was a real choice made of, I'm no longer healing. I'm working my life to optimize my health. And if I do that, I will be healthy. And it was also letting go of when people ask me now, what was it? I say it was ulcerative colitis. But I have a greater gut health and a greater physical health than pretty much anyone else I know. And that just comes from managing the things that I know, the work that I learned through the process with Mitch and have embodied since. And so for me through that time, yeah, my whole background disappeared. And I created this realizing about identity. It's like if I have a second chance at life, a true second chance at life, and I've realized what I have, and I've had this spiritual awakening journey, whatever you want to call it, and I have this awareness now, I'm not going to live my life again trying to fill my ego and achieve these things that actually leave me feeling empty or filling a void. And so I went about creating a process where I was like, I can't miss the marks. I'm going to be clear on the life that I'm creating, who I'm becoming, and I'm going to create a system that makes sure that I hit the marks and I can't mess it up. So in terms of, I call it unfuck-upable. If you just follow the steps of this system, I was like, I can't miss. It might take me 10 years, but I will get there. And that through time became the identity system, which was my, I want to call it my life's work to bring myself back to life and to create a life from conscious design and not miss the mark or fall through the cracks like most in the personal development space. That was the intention. And then I had people starting to see my journey and reach out. First was a business guy in business. And then there was an athlete about to retire. Then we had a guy looking for physical healing. And then CEOs of big companies, and people just started coming through word of mouth, through like, whoa, I saw what you did with this person. I have something I want to work on. Cool. And so I had no intention of this system being shared with the world. It was mine. But it just kind of came from its organic way, its natural process. And so I got clear over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. This is what I'm here to do. And we still did, you may have heard of Cool to Be Conscious, Dr. Espen, the ripple effect. So from 2021, when I got back to the sunny coast, I'd started the sunny coast breathwork stuff, and then linked up with Ru and Rye, and we launched Cool to Be Conscious up here, and then launched the Ripple Effect and went in and worked with Dr. Espen, and I did a whole bunch of things, but at a core, I knew my mission was still identity system. I was serving those missions because I believed in them, and they had a mission to serve others, but I knew my thing was still being born and built. So yeah, I went Ripple Effect and Cool to Be Conscious and Espen, and gave everything I could to those, and then slowly stepped back from each of them. And then it came to purely working on the identity system. And really, in essence, what it is enabling people that have that feeling that there is more for them. They're here to be more. They just have that. Something's awakened within them. It's like the lion has awoken and it can't go back to sleep. It's walking around the cage, looking, and it just wants to get into the wild. It's like, I don't belong in this cage. There's more for me. And whether that's an employee that's in their job that they're like, I'm the hardest worker in this room and I give so much, but there's something I'm like, I'm not fulfilled. I'm supposed to do my own thing. I'm supposed to help in my own way. I have my own business. Or there's the business owner that's been running a business and they've made the wealth or they've had the success. But there's this part of them that's like, oh, something not hitting the mark. That feeling, it's a feeling that people have. And my mission is to help people uncover that feeling and to chase and pursue their fulfillment, their happiness, what fulfills them, what they're here to pursue. It's kind of, I know it's identity mentor, but at a core, it's like a transition coach. It's someone that enables people to uncover their fire and live on that path of fulfillment.
That's incredible, honestly. And your entire story, congratulations on making it to where you are today, because what a story and what a turnaround. It's phenomenal to think that, I mean, you were at that stage where it was the end for you. There was no way out. There was no hope to even see that there was a way out. And now look at what you've created and what you're doing for other people. Like, amazing. My hat goes up to you. So congratulations. There is so much I want to ask. But I think firstly, I do want to touch on, I mean, you said back then when you were going through everything, you know, there was bullying and you were trying to fit in and you felt the pressure of the world almost to be something. And I feel a lot of us do fall into that trap of needing to be someone or prove something. And it normally happens at such a young age where we're trying to fit in, find our group and find our place in this world. And then, you know, you grow up and you get a little bit older, and that need to still prove to the world that you're good enough still has a fire in you. And I think what I want to understand is, do you feel in your story and in your perspective that in trying to prove that like most of us, it brings on external stresses that may potentially lead to poor mental health or poor physical health or becoming quite sick? And why do you feel that we get to that stage? It's almost that, you know, we're so wrapped up in trying to prove to the world that we are someone, that eventually our body takes over and goes, you need to stop because this isn't in alignment with yourself and you need to find out who you really are.
To me now, I see us as having a soul and a soul's path and a mind and a mental path. What we think we're supposed to do, what we're told or what we're conditioned to believe, and what our soul is wanting us to do. And everyone has that within them, because every single person has a soul's path where it's a feeling of flow, it's a feeling of fulfillment, it's that feeling of, this is what I'm supposed to do. There's an inner knowing, and not everyone connects with it. We all have it. But for me, it's enabling people, and it's having the lived experience and now doing it with so many people to go, pull back through these processes to get to here. And where I feel in regards to the question around, say, physical illness, mental health challenges, conditions, autoimmune, which is rapidly growing in society, it's, yeah, that we have a level of suppressed and repressed emotion that creates blockages in the body. And the reason that I say this is because think about it, when you have, let's say you're almost in a car accident, you slam on the brakes, there's a moment where you, and that feeling in your body, if anyone's watching this, listening to this, if you take a sharp, deep inhale into your chest up, you can feel the tension. And then as you let that go, it's not really fully dissipated. That's just one little micro breath. That then where does it go? That excess energy, whatever that is linked to, that would probably fear. That excess energy tied with fear is like put in a little bow, put in like a little, I explain it as like a ring box, like an engagement ring box. Pops up, it's like pop that in there, and we're just gonna, that'll get stored in the body. So that next time something similar happens, the body does what it's designed to do, or the mind does, and it goes, oh, car braking quickly, brake a little earlier, protective. But also, what happens is as it's stored in the body, it's not freed up, it's not expressed, it's not released, and it's dense energy. If I say sit and feel fear all day, you're like, no, that doesn't feel good. Well, the body is experiencing that without the mind being aware of it. And so our body is breaking down because it's in fear, or it's in shame or guilt, apathy or grief. And that's what it was for me. I've lived experience of it where through the journey with Mitch, what I credit the primary healing part. Like, yes, we did the food and the nutraceuticals and the sleep and all the other things, but they were like supports to enable the healing. The real healing was breath work. But what I mean really by breath work was somatic release. So for the first, most people that know breath work will know if you do a 90-minute breath work, that's a lot. Like people do them like maybe once every 6 months. I was doing 3 of those a week every week for 6 months. It was a lot. But at that point in time, all I was doing was laying in bed and, consuming bits of food to keep going. And I knew after my first ever breath work with Mitch, there was something to it. And what kept happening was every breathe I'd do, there'd be anger. So much anger suppressed. And what was really clear was when I was 11 years old, I had an experience where I got really, really angry and scared. And rather than being nurtured, I was actually punished for that. Don't ever express your anger like that again. It's an embarrassment. You should be so ashamed of yourself. And so as a little boy, my story's been like, anger is bad, push that down. So all of my anger over the years, as it go to come up, I just jam it down. And in terms of, it's funny, I got this book here at the moment, The Secret Language of Your Body. When you look at that and you look at large intestine or the colon, anger. And I didn't know this at the time. The first couple months of breath, anger was just coming out constantly. That I'd come out and finish and I'd feel better. I'd feel more clear. My stomach would feel better. There'd be less inflammation, less symptoms. And that was the process of healing, processing through anger. And different parts of the body have different, the heart's linked with grief. So when we talk about, say, heart attacks, what's the emotion that hasn't been expressed? When we have joint inflammation, you can look at that and the same kind of thing. Acne is typically linked with anger and frustration as well. It's an irritation, a heat that's coming out. And that for me was physical body was really just the canvas for the emotional body to be painted on. And I had no sense of smell for 25 years. I was born without a sense of smell. I never remember smelling anything. Saw ENTs and specialists when I was a teenager because I couldn't smell the difference between petrol and diesel. For a country kid, that's not a good thing when you're working on vehicles. That'll make a very upset dad. So mum took me to go, and the other thing was turning on gas in the house without being able to smell it. And if I lit a match, boom. So mum realized, oh, this is a bit of a risk. So we went and got me tested and checked and all the things, and they said, yeah, there's no signs. You won't ever smell. Just let it go. So I did for 12 years. And then when I was healing myself from the inside out, going, if I can come from death's door with this, I reckon I've read enough on Dispenza's work and Lipton's work now. I can be a living, breathing example of that. And so I did 3 weeks. Each day I did breath and meditation with the intention linked with the book and what it says about the nose. Did a couple of steam bowls. Within 3 weeks, I started smelling. One thing at a time, different things. And now I have a full sense of smell that I was told I'd never have. And that for me, again, was like there was emotions linked in with that. So I was processing and feeling those emotions and going through what it would be like to hold that and to heal that. And so in terms of the physical body, physical conditions, I absolutely believe that emotions are the root of that. Absolutely. Then when it comes to more of the mental side of things, mental health challenges, absolutely the same. Because when we think of mental, it's still of mind, it's still of body. It's just that the processing can be a bit different. because it's expressing itself in a different way. But as we know, the depression usually being a real heaviness, there's usually like, okay, what's the sadness underneath? What's that? Not a fear. What's the sadness or the grieving that's there? Or what's the lack of spark, the lack of purpose, the lack of fulfillment? Because there's a lot of people that they're really here to be an artist. Like that's what they'd love to do. They might not make much money from it, but that's what their soul's purpose is. I'm here to give to the world in that. And they're an accountant. Imagine taking an artist and sitting them at a desk for 6 months every day, and that's all they did. Like you can pretty clearly tell that in not too long, things don't feel right and they'll start to feel down. So that's definitely one part I look at is purpose fulfillment, which is, as we spoke about, my mission is to enable people to come into alignment with that, to uncover that. But then say with anxiety, it's like, what's the underlying fear that hasn't been processed for this to be wound, like keep hitting the wound? I'll give one analogy for a moment on healing. Imagine, think of a cyclist. I'm thinking of somewhere on the Gold Coast. Imagine like someone cycling down like Mount Tamborine. Is that Springbrook Mountain?
It's close enough. Yeah, we'll take it.
Someone's cycling down a hill wide open, flat out, and then they tuck the front end and they slide, and it takes all the skin off their arm, and it's just bloodied and cut up, and it's all grazed. And then they've got gravel in there and dirt, and they've got rocks and stones, and there's a bit of grass and all the things. Might be an ant somewhere in there, who knows? And they've just got this like skin off all the way up. And then they decide, they're like, oh, that's ugly. Like that, I don't want to look at that. That hurts. And so what they do is they grab a big jacket and wrap it around them. And then they go on walking about their day, living their life, continuing on without addressing what's there. Then what happens is they've got this jacket on, so people can't see their arm, they can't see the hurt or the wound. And they're walking down, they're at Burley, walking around, and someone bumps into them. They're like, whoa, like, hey, I didn't mean, what's going on there? Don't worry about it. And then they go to give their partner a hug that evening. They put their arm up. Too tight. Ooh. They go to shake someone's hand. They got a business meeting and they get the trigger. Go to shake their hand and they grab them in a part where there's still cut. No one can see the wound. It's there, but they've covered it up and they're denying that it's there, pretending it's not there. And then we wonder why we're constantly having these outbursts because the wound keeps getting hit. People don't know. And we're not seeing the wound because it's covered up by the jacket. We forget it's there, but then it keeps getting hit and bumped and knocked. And so the way I talk about whether it be physical or mental health healing, it's going, okay, if there's something that's popping up, if something doesn't feel great, there is likely a wound. And the first step and the most courageous step is being willing to go, there's something here, and taking that jacket off and looking at it. Ooh, that's not pretty, or that might not be what I want to see right now. But I'm going to acknowledge it, see it for what it is, and this can be healed. It might take work, but it's like, okay, like if it's been there covered up for a while, it's probably pussy and it's scabbed over, and you're like, oh man, I can see that bit of dirt under there, or that rock cut in there in that scab. I got to get that out. So you get the tweezers and that, just like your first session. Just like a breath work or whatever. It's like in that moment, it's not comfortable. But as you're pulling it out, you get there, and you look at it, and you're like, I got it. I got it out. Okay. And you put that down. There's a sense of confidence. There's a sense of empowerment. There's a sense of gratitude. Like, yes, I did the thing. And then, okay, I can do it again. And then little by little, bit by bit, over time, I'm pulling this bit out. Okay, I pull this out. Now I'm going to put some Dettol or antiseptic on here. I'm going to do this again. And for the first period of time while you're still pulling the things out, you may or may not wear the jacket. Like it's almost like you go into your session to do the healing, you pull it out, then you cover it back up. So I'm all good on the outside. People don't know what I'm going through, but you're at least looking at it yourself, and that's what matters. And by going through this process and by pulling it out, that that's healing. So the same spot that was pussy and infected, a week later, when someone bumps you in the same spot, rather than it being, what was that about? It's ooh, okay, it's all right. And then 2 weeks later, when that's scabbed over and it's starting to pull back, ooh, and then another week later, ooh, and then 2 weeks later, oh, I didn't notice anything. Whoa. So it's that gradual journey And this is where, to me, the inner journey, the inner work is the most courageous work at all. Full of all of the work in the world, to me at least, because it's where we really need to address the things that we've covered over with Jack. But when we do, the level of empowerment and the level of knowing and confidence in ourselves, it's life changing. It's undeniable, and you feel it in people.
You really do. You can tell, and especially working in this space, you can tell the people that have done the work and that are willing to do the work. And I honestly I find the body so fascinating. It's almost like it can't communicate to us in the way that we can communicate to each other. So in terms of that, like it has to communicate through showing physical signs of illness or stress, or as we said, like blemishes, or when you get sick and things like that's the body trying to communicate to you that something is not right. And we can either choose to address it or not address it. And unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of people choose not to address it. And then we hit these rock bottom moments. Now, as you can tell, you as well, you explained you hit that moment in your story. I had my own rock bottom moment, ignoring it for a long period of time. But we do live in a world where we're too busy, we're overworked, we're trying to commit to so many different things, we're trying to people please all the time. We don't even have enough time to go for that walk that we want to go for with a friend that we like. How do we prioritize this work so that we can prevent things like this? Because people do not see a need for prevention. They see a need for crisis support when it's needed.
Yeah.
That's then when we should, do breath work, and that's when we should meditate, and that's when we should go see a psychologist and get the support when we're in crisis mode. But it's not, I believe, it's not where we should be putting our focus. We should be looking at the preventative services that we can access to be able to better ourselves. So how do people prioritize that and know that it's a need?
Yeah. To me, the first piece is self awareness. For anyone that's listening to this, they're already on the path, they're already on the journey in some way, shape, or form, because this is a conversation around health. And, for those that aren't as yet, or they haven't started on the management or the preventative, for me, it's absolutely being able to check in and just, for me, the question is, am I loving my life today? Am I in love with my life today? And if it's not a, yep, okay, what could be different? What is it that I'm not loving? And I always start with self-assessment, self-awareness, because that's the first thing. You can't change it unless you're aware, and that's where rock bottom makes people aware. So it's more challenging when people aren't hitting rock bottom because they don't have that big smack in the face of awareness. Like, things are good, but good is the enemy of great. Because I don't need to change. And so until someone's felt great, they don't know good. And so this is where it's like, how do I get into that self-awareness point? Go and do a 20-minute breath work. It's long enough where you feel a change in your body, but you're not going into big depths. You'll feel a shift. You'll feel presence. You'll feel tingling in the body or whatever it is. You're like, whoa, what's this? And you go from a good to a great. And that, for so many people that I've seen over the years, has been like a shift point. Just a breathwork journey where they feel in connection with their body and they go, wow. So it's like an easy tool to start. Yeah, really what that then comes down to is self-awareness, feeling into yourself and asking a question. Okay, am I loving this? Am I loving that? Am I loving my relationship? Am I loving my job? Am I feeling energized each day? And if it's not an absolute yes, like a full body yes, and it's like, okay, we're probably at good. Good's like a 7. We've got great, we've got outstanding, and we've got 10, which is like world class. I'm looking for 10s. That's my mission. My purpose is to see everyone and, like, I possibly can connect with 10s in happiness and fulfillment. Happiness in the internal, fulfillment in their external. So it's looking at both. Am I happy within, and am I loving what I'm doing in the outside?
Is it achievable?
There's probably a few people in history that have achieved a 10 in everything. I say it that I work my life to have constructed my life now to live the highs as much as possible and feel the lows when they're here. I have a saying now, it's when it's real, feel. In between, it's like when I'm feeling, and because this is the thing, we all go through it. I've had a really challenging 6 months. The last 6 months, I've had traumas from childhood coming up, and they were blind spots. I didn't have awareness, so I had the jacket on without even knowing I had the jacket on, and I just kept getting hit. I was like, whoa. And so it's for me, it's been an acknowledgement that, yeah, not every day is going to be a 10. Some days aren't even a 5. Like, today is really fucking tough. It's like, okay, I'm going to feel the tough because I know this will pass. And when I'm feeling on top of the world and it's a 10, I'm going to feel that too. And I know that'll pass as well. It's that awareness. Is it achievable?
It's manageable.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, it's crazy because, you know, I feel like everybody goes through a journey where it's that highs and lows, and it's jumping up and down that scale all the time. And you're going to constantly be triggered. But I think that moves then into, you know, when we talk about identity, and some of us, well, actually, probably all of us have different versions of ourselves that we go through throughout our lifetime. And I know in my own journey in identifying when I was sick, I was a sick person. That was my identity. And then coming out of that and trying to figure out, right, who am I beyond that? Who am I without? And we go through that. And a lot of people call it the identity crisis, where you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want, when new trends, new influences come around, new versions of yourselves pop up. But my big thing as well is a lot of people feel that they go through different versions, and in becoming someone else, they don't know how to let go of their past version. And sometimes that version was there to keep them safe, to protect them, to keep them free of harm. And it's really hard to let go of that version when it's all you've known. It's got you to where you are today. But as you sort of mentioned earlier, there's that little thing inside of you that goes, I want more. I want to take that risk. I want to deep dive into the unknown. I want to stop holding myself back. How do people let go of the past versions that served them for a period of time, but are no longer serving them and they need to discover something else?
How do people let go of the past version and step into it? And I preface the question with, are they aware that there's something deeper, or are they not yet aware? Two different answers.
I think where it's like that, as you mentioned, there's that little niggling thing that I think they're aware. Okay. So yeah, we'll roll with people are aware.
Okay, they've got, and it can be tiny, but it only needs, for most people, that's all it is. It's just this little, like, itch. You got 360 degrees in a circle, and it's 1 degree, and you feel that 1 degree every single day. Yeah, that. How do people shift? The real answer, it's not pretty, it's not sexy. It's actually create space to feel what that is. Because we're so much in consumer, phones, social media. We're so much in doing with work. We're so much in covering up with distractions that the feeling, that guidance, I use the term soul. It's not from this mind. It's from the soul. There's a knowing for a reason. Your mind doesn't want to have you constantly sitting in that 1 degree. It's something within. And so that can only be connected when there's space. So when you're driving home from work, no podcast for a little bit. We don't need to have the ROI on everything. And this is coming from a recovering ROI guy. Like, everything had to have a return on the investment of my time. Drive in silence. Just like feel. And what happens is, as you feel, just like with the breath work, as the annoying thoughts come up and as the things come up and they come through, space is created. A little space inside, a little pocket. And in that little pocket is where, if you want to, again, I talk from a more spiritual level because of my experiences and what's going on. And I'll just, for simplicity's sake, I'll call it God. It's like where God, source, universe drops into that space. And it's like this. And you have like a moment of, maybe I'd love to do this. And that's all it needs to be, because the seed is planted. It might be a meditation. It might be a breath work. But just a little bit where you're not doing anything, not trying to achieve anything. You're just creating space. And this is where you'll hear most like high level business owners. They're like, oh, when I'm meditating, all my ideas come through. It's not the intention of meditation, but yes, that will happen because you're creating some space. I explain it as a straw. That knowing you are connected to in every moment. But it's just that when we're so in our head trying to control everything, that the connection to that is like we've got like a McDonald's straw trying to feed in, a water tank of information. And as we create space, the mind's not as active. As a result, there's less thoughts. Brain waves slow down. This goes, oh. And as this opens, that widens, more information comes in. And that's when you have those ahas, the realizations, the revelations, the light bulb moments that you weren't expecting. Space. And that can also be created through people asking questions. Because what happens when I ask you a question? It's like, contemplation is space. So
I
this
love
is
that.
right. You can speed up the process by having someone to ask you the questions. Because in those moments of there's blank, there's not an answer yet. Then it's there's an answer. But in that space between here and here, that was blank. That's space. I love watching people that have been, let's say they're successful, like we've had 8 and 9 figure CEOs, be these massive companies, and they're like, I want to do something else. So we'll be sitting there and we'll go, what is it you'd love to do? Like, what would set your soul on fire? What would light you up so that you wake up every day like, I have this, and this is my ultimate way of helping people? Because what happens is like our purpose, our fulfillment gets deeper and deeper as we go. We start out building a company that might be about, let's say it's helping people with skincare because they've had their own challenges with the skin or with family health. And so they go down that path and they're giving and they're helping so many people. Now it's become this big company and they get to a new layer of depth where they're like, I've almost like ticked this box. I can feel I'm ready for then there's a next layer. And so that's when you're asking the question, what is it? And then like, I want to help people. Ooh, you want to help people? Okay. What would that look like? How would you love to help? I don't want people to go through what I went through for those years of trying to build this. Like I want to help. Oh, okay. So you want to help people that want to like start their own business? Yeah. Yeah, okay. What would that look like? I'd love to be able to sit down with a group of like young entrepreneurs that want to build their business and guide them. Okay. Now they sit and then you just ask a couple questions and they're just going at it. They're like details, information. This is how to look. This is what I do. Whoa. There's that fire. There's that little space that's just needed a moment. It's like a flame with oxygen. It gets that moment of oxygen and poof.
Do you think people are afraid of reaching their full potential? And if so, why?
My true answer in this, that I have to speak from true within, is no, because their true potential is beyond anything they could imagine. Like to me, the experience that I've been through, our potential is beyond us as a human. We're in this infinite energy that we don't even know what our potential is. What I really feel people are is fearful of the uncertainty because they don't know what they could become. We were doing a process. I was down in Melbourne over the Monday, Tuesday at an event. We went through a process and we'd been talking about the duty of us as men leading our mission and service. And we got taken through a process where we're walking through life and we get to a crossroad. And at that crossroad, there is a boardwalk. It's a beautiful boardwalk going through nature, through the forest and through the paddocks. It's varnished wood and it stays flat. Might have little inclines, little declines, but it's primarily that. And then on our right is the mountain. But the mountain isn't just like Mount Everest. It's like, if anyone's seen like Lord of the Rings, it's like Mordor. It is this huge thing and it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look fun. It's like, oh, that thing is scary. That is not nice. But what happens is in this process, we get taken down the boardwalk. And I can remember going through the process. I'm walking down the boardwalk and the first maybe 3 to 10 seconds, I'm like, oh, this is nice. But there's this part of me that's going, you're not made for the boardwalk, Toddy. Like there's something for you over here. And so as we keep getting taken down the boardwalk, it's this feeling. And as we have to keep walking the path, there's like more and more regret, more and more emptiness, more and more, I'm not here for this. I know I'm here for more. The boardwalk's easy, but I'm not here for easy. I'm here for the challenge of life. So as we get taken through, it's like you're getting it drained out of you. Life is getting drained out of you because you know that there is that potential and you're not chasing it because of the fear. Then we get the opportunity to go back to the crossroad and we look at the mountain. And when I went through the process, like I'm trudging up this snowy mountain in pain, my quads are burning, I'm struggling to breathe. And there's this, oh, this is hard. But at the same time, I am so alive. I am so fulfilled in what I'm doing. I'm like, this is so challenging. But every step I take, I'm like, yes, I have chosen the path, not settled. And this is where I feel like the potential is in choosing the challenge. Because as we know, the greater that challenge, the greater we get to that next step. It's like on that mountain, there's kind of, and I was only visualizing going through this morning again. On that mountain, you kind of, it's like base camp at Everest. You get there and you can actually take in, holy crap, I'm at base camp. I'm here. I've made it. I've done all of these things to get here. And there's euphoria. And then you choose what level you want to go to. Because for some people, they're like, I'm now at this stage and this is all I need. And they can be there. And that's it. But to me, I feel like we all have a mountain inside of us. And the mountain is completely different. But we are lit up and we are full in life and we are vibrant when we're choosing that mountain. And to me, like I look at you and what we're doing and what you've been doing, and I'm like, this is a part of your mountain. You are sharing a message that helps people, and you're choosing this. And I know, as we all know, there aren't days that not every day is a 10, and some days you're like, oof, okay. But then there was also that feeling of like, you keep choosing it. Like, are you sadistic? Like you're still choosing it, just like climbing the mountain. And like my quads are burning, I can't breathe. I'm like, can I just roll down the mountain back to the boardwalk? And in that moment, you're like, couldn't do it. There's just something inside. It's like, you know what that's going to feel like. And I actually got quite emotional in that process on the weekend because when we went from the boardwalk, we actually got taken through this visualization to our deathbed. And that hit me because it took me back to when I was in hospital that and they told me I wouldn't survive. And it was this feeling, the same feeling. It was emptiness. It was unfulfilled. It was I haven't had family. I haven't had connections. I haven't shared deep love. And so my actual practice probably for the next month is I'm going to go through that process each day. So I'm consciously, I get to feel that and go, what is my mountain? Because there are those days where it's like, I really want the ball right
Hmm. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that definitely, and I feel a lot of people do as well. Is that process of sometimes you do block it out and you avoid and you don't want to have to face your fears, and it's easier to settle. And an easier life sounds better than one that is constantly climbing a mountain. And in a world where we're constantly seeing people reach these highs and success with social media that's falsely advertising that we're all living this glamorous world in some $3.5 million mansion somewhere, it makes us feel like those days when we're not doing great, that we're failing at life. And that brings its own pressure as well in the world that we're living in today. And I guess then my question to you is, you talk about that you're still going through processes where you're figuring things out and you're trying to help other people along the way. Do you feel like that you have fully overcome what you have previously gone through and let go of those identities and found your own system that's working for you?
The answer to that is, have I overcome it? Parts. I can say parts, not all, not at all. My physic, and this is the context to the last 6 months. I was traveling around the country in my van last year while I was working in the identity system doing that. And I started having these triggers coming up, emotional triggers that I just couldn't put my finger on. And like I said, I've done a lot of work. I couldn't work it out. And I ended up going to a Vipassana, which I've sat 4 of them before. This is my 5th. It was 10-day silent meditation retreats. And I actually ended up having a panic attack, which I'd never had in that situation. It's intense because you can't read, write, talk, share, express, release. And it was really intense. And for those that have had panic attacks, they know that feeling. And coming out the other side of it, I still couldn't work out what was causing it. I was like, is it spiritual overwhelm? Is it some kind of loneliness or abandonment? And through the process, and it's been the last 6 months really, I've been processing. I've been seeing my practitioners consistently doing the work, whether that be psychologists, somatic therapists, to work through deeper traumas from within me. And there were parts where I said before, and that you'll remember this, where I said I gloss over things. There were things that I've told on podcasts and been on stage speaking about before, I gloss over them. And then when the somatic therapist said, and I was telling the story about, like, I remember laying in my bed writing letters home to my family and like thinking I'm going to die. And she goes, whoa, are you in your body right now? Because somatic work is all about being in the body, feeling the sensations. Oh no, I was completely dissociated out of my body. Like my mind was da 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 da, but I wasn't feeling. She said, I just want you to go back and feel that. I sat there and I just started bawling my eyes out. Like I was fucking terrified.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna die. And that's what was real in my body, but I wasn't allowing myself to feel it. And so there's been 6 months of working through a lot of the stuff that I didn't process then, because I was like, no, once I started that journey with Mitch, I'm gonna live, I'm gonna do this. I was like the high achiever of healing myself. So I didn't process the feeling. And then that 6 months was brought up, like I said, the things that occurred in childhood that I wasn't aware of. And so now I'm still processing those. And that that comes because challenges, the wounds on the arm, like the push bike, those things are deep, and they're the most deep unconscious. So when I talk about, as in my background, the human mind begins with identity. It does. Our values, beliefs, behaviors, and actions all come from our identity. If I'm a healthy person, I value health. I have this beliefs around health. My behaviors and my actions align. If I have an identity of I'm an unhealthy person, health isn't anywhere near my top values. Beliefs around health aren't great. Behaviors align with those, and so do the actions. It's the core. It's the linchpin. So I speak about identity, and that's where I work at, because I know of its efficiency, its capacity to make change. I can simply shift someone's I am through a process, and in that, their whole life trajectory, their values, beliefs, behaviors, and actions all fall into line, which is so magnificent to see, rather than trying to work. Because if you try to shift their value to health, but they've still got an identity of I'm unhealthy or I'm fat and lazy, they will always revert back to that identity, because who I am creates what I do. And so for me, it's acknowledging identity is where I work for that. But then there's still things deep down within, deeper down, that are the wounds on the arm. And I can be a healthy person. I can be a phenomenal person. I can be a leader, whatever it is. Doesn't mean I don't still have wounds on my arm. It just means that I choose how I get to process those. I'm courageous. I feel fully. And so that means when I see that stone in my arm, I'm like, let's take this out and let's feel it as we take it out, so we can let everything out. That's the aspect for the layers for myself. And in terms of the system, identity system, I originally created the system for me, and it worked for me because I had ample time while I was laying in bed, not doing a whole lot, to do all of my practices, do all of my identity questions, to do all of my identity embodiment. I had like a 3-hour morning routine. Like, that's not a joke. I was one of those people, but I could, because I wasn't doing anything else. And that's what I needed to heal. Then as I bring it out to professional athletes, all they do is want to become a champion so they can invest 2 to 3 hours a day in their work. High-level CEOs, not so much. Single mums, definitely not. Young people that have friends, not really. So what I've done is I've taken the identity system and I made it into a flex. Not my flexing muscles, but flexible. So there is a system, but you choose your own system. So it's kind of like, when you go to dinner and you can choose things off the menu that work for you, that you want, that's how it works. So it's, hey, if this tool works or if this tool works, pair those together. Leave these other ones out. You don't need it. Just implement this process. So really my work over the last 4 or 5 years has just been identity. And so the more I do on identity and the more I study and research and pull it apart, the more I go, here's one tool, here's another tool. So I have what do you call it when you got a barrage? Something like when you got lots of weapons.
Yeah. We'll just roll with what you said, because I don't have the word either.
There's a stack of tools all to identity that I can pull out and use to then be able to support someone to shift all of the other areas in one adjustment.
Mm-hmm. Which is so needed in the world that we're living in today, because when you think about it, support like that and learning to figure out your identity and who you are is so individual. And we live in a world that constantly tells us that one size fits all when it is not reality. We look for magic diet or the magic tools in order to fix ourselves, and then we try them all and we pay so much money for the world to fix us when it's never going to work because, as we said, like support and the way that we view ourselves and our bodies and our minds are all so different, and it needs that tailored support. So I love the fact that that's what you step into and you're able to support people through that. This has been an amazing conversation, and I'm so grateful to have you on to share everything that you know. I know we've only sort of touched the surface, but I guess like ending this podcast today, what are three things that people can do every day? Now I know three is very small, especially coming from someone that has a 3 hour routine. Um, but
Not anymore.
sorry, did. But someone that is busy, lives that hustling lifestyle that cannot prioritize time like they would like to, what are three things that they can implement in their everyday to help support where they want to go in terms of honoring their identity?
Breath. So breath work. When I say breath work, just and I say this in an efficient way, just chuck it on your phone through YouTube, anywhere from 2 minutes to 20 minutes, and just do that. Because where I feel it's so efficient is that it changes the brain waves just through you doing the breathing, and it's easily guided. It's not like meditation where you feel like you're trying to hold on to the object. Breath does that for you. So it's an easier alternative in my perspective to create space than meditation. It's breath number one. Number two, creating the space in addition to breath. So space again. What does that look like? Drive to work in silence on the way there, or on the way home, even better, because you're like in decompression mode. And that's when, and then things start to come in clearer. So a little bit of space. Driving in silence, having brekkie in the morning without your phone or music on, just simple things like remove the consumption. Little bits of space will do you a world of transformation. And then the third one would be a journal. You can expressive journal, but three things I absolutely would recommend is who am I and why? What am I grateful for and why? And what's going well and why? So who am I and why? So I'd write down like, I am a leader because. So not so much like there's the affirmation, but the because statement is what I call an identity statement. And that's the part that actually rewires, because you're giving justification to why you are that. It's not just like some airy fairy statement. Like I'm a king. No, you're not. I'm a king, not in the figurative sense, but in the literal sense of these are the characteristics I embody. I show up like this, I do these things, I embody this. It's like, no, that's true to me. In those as an example there. I'm not actually a king. I don't use that archetype either. Interesting that it popped up. That having the I am and the why for sure, because if you, and starting that in the day, doing that at the start of the day. Gratitude and why. So not just I'm grateful for the beautiful sun shining outside. I'm grateful for the beautiful sun shining outside because I get to go and lay in it. I get to receive the vitamin D. I get to enjoy the time at the beach because of it. And then the final one, what's going well and why, is kind of like a momentum. So I'm doing really well with choosing to create space because I'm choosing that time, consciously creating it, and I can also see that things are starting to come through. So those are three practices I would do for sure.
Incredible. And they sound very simple. I don't want to say simple because it is very hard for a lot of people to, as we said, even create that space in a world that is so noisy. So I think the best thing that you can probably do is just turn up for it. Just commit to one day, or commit. I do this thing where I'm like 30 days, I'm going to commit, and I'm the same, very determined personality, and I will get the job done. And then after, I'm normally like, I like these patterns, I'll continue to do them. So it's just turning up and giving yourself time. And what do you have to lose? I feel like that's my mindset all the time. You've got nothing to lose. I have two other questions I want to ask before I can sign you off. Just to fit it in quickly, what would you say to your younger self that was back in school, was getting bullied, was trying to find his way in this world, feeling really lost, was unknown of this whole identity system that you are to know today? What would be the message that you would give him?
Have more fun and do what makes you smile.
Okay.
I know that with that comes the happiness and the fulfillment.
Mm.
If you're always happy and you're always smiling, it's like you're doing something right. You can't be
Mm.
hating your job and smiling about it all the time. It's work. So yeah.
You can do it for a short period, but then we know how that ends. Lovely. And then lastly, what is the one lesson that you feel that has resonated with you through your journey so far? So if you could share with everyone one lesson that you've learnt that is pivotal in your journey, what would you share?
Who you tell yourself you are is who you are. Who you become.
Incredible. Who do you tell yourself you are?
Country kid that loves having fun and seeing people happy and fulfilled. I came back to at the start. Yeah, that's it. And that's where I really mean that when I say who you tell yourself you are is who you become, who you are. Because I've seen it so many times, whether it's developing a world champion athlete, having someone that's gone through paraplegia and paralyzed, to having their body work, to people launching multi-million-dollar companies. Like, if I could get one message out, it is that, like, connect in and uncover who you are at your core, because when you do, it's like life flows from you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that you did today and letting us into your story as well. It has been a phenomenal podcast to be able to sit here and listen and also learn myself. And that's why I love doing this, is because, you know, I'm able to learn from other people and other experiences to better myself and keep pushing towards that 10. But where can people find you if they want to sort of connect, if they want to learn more about the identity system? Where can people get in contact with you?
The Identity Mentor _ on Instagram, and Identity System with Todd Jarratt on Facebook are the two primary platforms, but most active on Instagram and manage the messages in there. So there for sure.
Awesome. So as we say in the modern day century, go send Todd a DM. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It has been an amazing podcast with Todd Jarratt, talking all about identity and the identity system and how he created that to also embody it within his life as well. Thank you, Todd. I want to, once again, thank you and congratulate you on your amazing journey from hitting that rock bottom moment to finding your own system and being able to implement and share it today. What a phenomenal story that you've been able to turn around. So thank you so much for sharing.